Welcome to all of you, and welcome to this session with the title a challenging topic, we will say. Perhaps to 2030, 2040, we will see. We will have a final vision of this question at the end, after just 40 minutes. So, I am on stage with three fantastic speakers going from Germany, from France, with an extensive experience from everywhere, mostly. And so with Caroline Tailleferd-Guibert, CMO from Deepki, Julius Göllner, co-founder of Arrtist, and Carsten Lebtig, founder from Workmotion. So let's get started because we have a limited time. First, we will share with you a snapshot of the European digital landscape, just to have in mind some. You can see the title, but no, don't move. It's just an illustration, you know. It's just an illustration, but it's a well-known fact in reality, with the confirmation that Europe knows how to create and develop startups. So at the beginning it was not so obvious, but now it's very common. And the good news also, it's in all industries, from deep tech to green tech, etc., etc. And even more, because it was not so easy at the beginning, we are able to create and to scale up to unicorns. So we are late from the other, from US and China, but not so late, and we are improving every year more and more unicorns. So it's good news. The problem is the scale-up problem, well identified, when we have to come to unicorns, to decacorns. There we are very late. We don't have we don't know exactly how to build giants, and I don't speak about platforms because we have none in reality in this data set. We have, if I take only the world top 50 worldwide giants, we have two in Europe, Spotify and Zalando. That's all. And it's not really platform, as you know. So there is a problem at this stage. One possible explanation, perhaps, and I try to make something new with this slide, is perhaps it's a question of culture, perhaps at the very early stage, very beginning. Because we have a lack of knowledge of each other, of Germany, France, Spain, etc. We don't know clearly the unicorns from the other countries. I don't very few of them. So I try to imagine an index. We have in France a famous index with Next 40, the creme of the creme of our startups in France. I try to imagine we have one for Europe. So EU, I name it EU 20. But with the idea is to take the first unicorns from each countries. So in 20, we have 20 countries here, from Lithuania, Ireland, and so on, with this startup. But I know perhaps less than 10 in these figures. But so it's very few in reality. So it's not. It's the first part of the problem. So with you, Caroline, Julius, and Carsten, we will explore the roots of the problem, and I will try to begin with you, Caroline. As CMO of Deepki, in a nutshell, I will say that Deepki is a company that helps real estate company become carbon neutral and sustainable. So the art of the green tech. So it's very interesting, and yeah. I take the time to I ask you my first question. And you work extensive background in international development, not only with Deepki, but with other companies too. Can you help us to understanding why it's often easier to go to the US first, but perhaps you are not agree with that? Perhaps it's my idea, but you are not agree with that. And then come back stronger in Europe.
So first of all, yes, I have more than 20 years experience in the software industry and always in international context, and I've experienced both ways to expand to the US. So early in my career, I experienced how you can create a startup in Europe and simultaneously create it in the US. And that's easier but there are some prerequisites. So it's easier because it's less intensive on capital. Also, you try lots of things when you're young, so you're more agile. You don't have to redevelop your product afterwards. So it's easier from one perspective, but the prerequisites are a little bit more challenging. It means that you need to create global startups from the beginning. It means that you must have this global experience before creating those startups. And it's very difficult for first-time founders.
For everybody.
It's not for everybody, yes. You must have an experience of how to scale, how to expand, have international experience, and not all founders can do that. So you can be successful doing this. In that experience, we had 50% of the revenue coming from the US and 50% of the revenue coming from Europe. So it works, but it requires a lot of skills and experience before getting started. On the other hand, what we see very often in Europe is startups being created locally, and then they expand to the neighbors countries. And so even though it can seem easier, like a baby step approach, and in some ways it is, then it is quite slow. Usually you create things in language, and then in Europe you have many languages and many regulations, so you have to adapt to each European country. It takes quite a lot of time, and then you think that you're going to expand to the US, but then you need to have a lot of capital to finance that, because you need to redevelop your product or adapt massively your product and re-experience the product market fit phase. And so that's challenging as well. But there are strategies to overcome or make it less difficult.
Preparing these panels, we speak about the green tech industry, which is quite specific in this capability to develop in Europe, inside Europe, and you have an experience on this. I would like to share with us this.
Yes, absolutely. So the green tech industry is very different because it's very regulated, and we are lucky that the Trump era of USA allowed the Europe to be ahead of the curve on those regulations. And so European startups in green tech, they're more mature with those regulations. They have had the chance to experience a lot of things on their core market before going to the US. And so the example is that at Deepki, for instance, we are the double of the size of our main US competitor. So it's a market that's EU-driven, which is very specific in the tech industry, which is usually very US-driven.
It's very interesting to have this kind of example, because we have a lack of this kind of industry, quite specific, where open for our startup with an open garden, I will say. Mm. So thanks for sharing this. Carsten, I come to you. And you have a valuable understanding of our topic from Workmotion, which is a global HR platform that helps companies to hire and board their employees on international level. So what would you like to add to Caroline's first sharing, and perhaps especially regarding the US-Europe dilemma? You have some
great question, and thanks for having me here. So I have a little bit of different point of view than from Caroline. I think, first of all, like, in order to become a superpower by 2030 or 2040, we need to 10x our ambition level, right? So I do a little bit of angel investment on the side. Like, when I see a pitch deck, an early stage pitch deck, the revenue ambition for the first 5 years is sometimes 20 million, 30 million. Just 10x that, right? So think way bigger. We shouldn't strive for becoming unicorns. We should strive to become decacorns, or I don't know, 100 billion market cap. I'm not even sure how this is called, right? I think we're a pretty young company. We are 3 years old. We raised 70 million. We are in only a few selected European markets. And now that when I thought about this panel today, I thought, man, I made so many mistakes. Like, I should have gone to the US like immediately, right? But as a European, like, we tend to, okay, let's first start in our home turf. In our case, that's Germany, right? So yes, we claim to be the #1. We are stronger than Deal and Remote and so on in our home turf, but who cares at the end of the day, right? So In Germany, we are strong. Then we hired our next sales reps in the UK because we understand the language, right? So we didn't have to localize that much. And then from the UK, we went to France because it's our neighbor, but like France is like killing us. It's a complete different market, like different mentality. Like you need to be a French company in order to be successful here, right? So, and we were afraid of going to the US, right? So why? Well, because it requires a lot of capital. You've touched this, right? So hiring a sales rep in the US, like it's like those people are like making 3 times more than our highest paid senior management people, right? So it's like in the hundreds of thousands of US dollars typically, right? You need to rebuild a big part of the company over there. So I think the mental barrier to go to the US is absolutely there, right? And that's why we tend to think a little bit smaller, and we tend to stay in our home turf in Europe, and we go here a little bit and there a little bit, but it's not the real deal. So I think in order to become a superpower, we need to think way more bigger. We need to think very US-centric, right? Because that's where the growth is, that's where the investors are, that's where the right capital is, right? So the very aggressive growth capital that we need, and then we can attract more capital because it's capital intensive, and build those big companies that we desperately need, right? So I also didn't know many of those companies that you had on the slide. Everybody knows Adobe, everybody knows Salesforce, Zoom, I don't know, Dropbox and so on, but like, who knows like more than 3 public B2B SaaS companies in Europe, right? So pretty hard.
Exactly, you summarize the part of the problem. So Julius, it's another vision. You founded Arrtist, Arrtist. It's a game of joke with the name. B2B software community, in short, to promote exchange, sharing between SaaS founders and investors, mainly in Germany, but not only, I guess. We will explain this. And it's particularly interesting for us in Paris to hear as a testimony from Carsten. It's very, very interesting and challenging. From a German perspective also, what you learn about the difficulty of initially scaling up in Europe? What is your feeling?
It's a good question, and I mean it adds to Carsten's answer, I think. So what do we do with Arrtist? We are trying to do the same like you guys do here in France for many years, very successfully. We try to connect the ecosystem in Germany and learn by doing so. So I think in Germany we need to differentiate like 2 company fields. One is like venture-backed and non-venture-backed. Yeah, we are always usually taking only a look on the venture-backed cases. I think on VC cases there is a framework now we see a lot, and here I do not agree so much with Carsten. I think the general like really playbook is Germany to US. So if you manage to get traction in Germany, let's say $1 million in ARR, and you're successfully raising a Series A, and you have the willingness of a founder to move to the US, then there is a very clear recommendation from the main investor side to move. And there is a logic in it. If we take the customer acquisition to lifetime logic and put it to market entry costs to a market lifetime value, it makes sense to go to the US instead of France or Spain. Yeah, so it's a thing.
In France, we have this famous example of Criteo, which just became his incredible growth exactly like that.
Yeah, so this is a thing. Nevertheless, of course, it needs like investment, as Carsten said, usually 1.5 to 2 million euro minimum to go. And I think there is attractivity to go to France. But if you take a look at the boards of VCs, yeah, a classical German early stage VC, you probably found 4 German partners. And I guess if you take a look on the French VC, there are many cases, not everywhere, but 4 French partners. So we are specializing on the investment side in functionality. So there's a SaaS expert and a green tech expert, but no one has a clue about how to conquer a new market in Europe. Yeah? And I think this is the mixture we are seeing. If you take a look on the other side, like non-venture backed, maybe bootstrapped, there is a problem of having the financials to go to the US. And there you usually see expansion cases. So you conquer customers in Germany, big enterprises who maybe also have a national subsidiary in Spain or in Poland or in France. And then you win this department, so you're expanding slowly to France, and then you're slowly, without a big growth case, expanding to Europe step by step. But this, of course, will not win the race and build decacons. So we are a little bit, I think, stuck in the middle from my point of view, and this is a big problem.
Yes, it's we have to work on this. So perhaps we can discuss about some solutions. And Caroline, coming to you, I come back to you to get your advice on what could be done to accelerate the growth of startups at the European level. Of course, in other words, what are the main bottlenecks you identified or identified that need to be removed to enable startups to expand more quickly at the European scale?
So I would say think global from the start. That means leveraging all the resources that are available on the net right now. Read blogs, attend conferences like this one, and there are many others as well, so that you get comfortable with all the best practices to scale your business very quickly. If you read blogs like Dave Kellogg's blogs, not only will it help you grow your business, but it will help you access capital, and that's really critical. So I come back to that point. If you want to scale and scale fast, you need to access capital, and in order to access capital, you need to apply a lot of best practices in all fields and be like a revenue expert. So I would say that the European founders, they are often engineers, and so they are often creating great products. They don't have a lot of business acumen. I know that's a cliche, but
Same in Germany.
And you need to learn that revenue is a science, sales is a science, and you can learn it, and there are best practices out there, and you should really get comfortable with those and be metrics oriented. That's really mandatory, I would say. I also would like to emphasize the fact that thinking global from the start, you can hire diverse teams, international teams that don't speak your own language, will get you out of your comfort zone, but will bring a lot of value to your company. And that's one example, but really think out of your comfort zone, I would say.
Perhaps for all of you, you speak very few about the capability of European Union to facilitate the growth of. If we have an accumulation of regulation to protect Europe just now, it's certainly good, but we need also regulation to facilitate. You identify some, you would like to have some facilitation on this side coming from Europe, or it's a problem just for startup to find their own way?
I think if I can make a wish, I would like to. Yeah, but to be very realistic, we are in the European Union having multiple stakeholders working on regulation, and this is a process of compromises, and this takes time. So if we take a look on the data privacy regulation, where we worked on a long time, and then implementation started, I can say that 90%, 95% of B2B SaaS startups in Germany, which work on the sales motion, they do cold mailing, yeah, which is forbidden by European. So just to give an example, yeah, and now we're thinking about AI regulation, and we're working on this, and then it comes into place. And if you take a look on the investment side, there was a statistic from Dealroom, I think, published yesterday, 2019 to 2023 investment, 20 billion in the US versus 1 billion in the EU. A lot of this concentrated, but I think we really need to think about, okay, the regulatory side, I don't see a big chances. We can work on combining ecosystem and helping in go-to-market, because, as you said, I think there we are like reluctant to the regulatory side. We can help each other on a way more formal, easygoing side. How to do go-to-market in France, how to do market in Germany. We can try to organize. We can also do individually, contact people, founders, go to the other ecosystem and learn. And this, I think, is what we should do more.
You want to add?
Yeah, maybe to add on. So two things pop into my mind. So one thing is like it's incredibly hard and even dangerous to hire talent over Europe, but there's a solution, Workmotion, of course, right? So I don't want to dive in that, but like in Germany right now we have a big discussion around ESOP, right? It's incredibly hard to incentivize employees. I'm not sure how it's in France, but in Europe, there's no good solution, right? So you need to build like phantom stocks, and then they are taxed like income, like at 45% or whatever. So and that's not really helping, right? So and then you have the US companies attacking us here in Europe. They come over and they can pay. They have like those incredible valuations, right? So they find the best talent. They can pay with nice stock options or RSUs or something like this. The employees start to have dollar signs in their eyes, and they are getting the best talent away from us. And this is being discussed now, but in Germany, I'm not sure how long it's being discussed, like for years and years and years, and like we're just doing circles and circles, and like all of this over-regulation doesn't really help.
Sometimes regulations don't help, but sometimes regulations do help. So I know, back to green tech, I mean, all those regulations are helping European companies get ahead of the US, and we should really benefit from that. So if some funders have some ideas, go for it in the green tech space.
Maybe one thing to add, I think it is, we see two trends, yeah? We even see very early founders, like pre-seed, directly going to the US, incorporating their access to capital, going aggressive. And I think what you said, Caroline, I agree. If the regulation is in place at a certain point, it will be a protection barrier for US companies entering. Too complex, they are not familiar. So then we will have a chance of building maybe pan-European decacons. But to do so and to do it fast, we still need to work on the go-to-market connections there, because this problem still is the same, I guess.
Definitely.
I mean, it would be interesting to hear how you do it in green tech. Like, how do you do go-to-market in Spain if you're a French founder or a French operator?
Well, the good things about regulations from the EU is that they're the same across Europe. So the Spanish companies need to comply to EU regulations, just the same as German companies and that kind of things. So we were lucky in that perspective. And so that's why we opened offices in Europe first. But now we are really looking at the American market and starting a few things there. And what we're seeing is that we are really ahead, and our US competitors, they're struggling. They're really struggling in EU because it's difficult for them to land in EU and comply with those regulations that they don't understand. Plus, in the US, since there's less appetite for those regulations and so on, the market is less mature, so they are struggling on their own market.
Thanks. Carsten, you preparing this panel, you told me that you identify we have a lake in Europe of IPOs. Could you tell me more about this, because it's certainly a key issue?
Yeah, I think for me it all starts with having the right capital, a lot of capital and the right capital, right? So, but like, how do you attract as a European ecosystem like a lot of capital or the right capital? Like, you need like those liquidity events, like called IPOs, or like really big exits. And like I said earlier, like we really haven't had them, right? So if you want to get to become a superpower by 2030, we probably need 20 IPOs of 10 billion plus market cap, and I don't see them coming, right? So maybe there are a few potential ones, but like I really don't see like 20 out there. So once we have like those incredible liquidity events, like this will make the US VCs like really, oh, there's money to make in Europe, right? So right now, like they are gradually coming over, right? They are opening up their offices in London and maybe Berlin and Paris and so on, but they are still hesitating because there's such a big opportunity over there in the US. And for example, what I refer to as the right capital, right? So we have investors from Germany, France, and the US, right? And I can tell you, like when I have a board meeting, like it's like two different worlds I'm talking to, right? So the European people right now in this environment, like they say, okay, cut costs, right? Be cautious, extend runway, right? So until 2025 or 2026, like. And then we have the US board member, like says, like, no, grow. Like, what is your customer acquisition cost? What's your payback periods and so on? So coming back to metrics, like Caroline mentioned, right? And if the metrics, even in a softer market environment, but if the metrics are still more or less healthy, right? So the US board member will always say, like, let's grow. Like, what do you want to become? Like a profitable company that's not growing, right? So no, the big exits are out there if you have hyper growth and you have a clear path to profitability, right? So, and I think attracting this kind of capital is really crucial, but we need those kind of very public events that everybody talks about, called IPOs.
Julius, I agree with that, and perhaps I would like to have perhaps your advice. I don't know, but what could be your main idea to facilitate the expansion of startups in Europe?
Yeah. Very good question, and there are a couple of people working on this for many years. I mean, to be very honest, like a problem I'm facing in conversations every week, independent of talking to Nordic founders, UK founders, French or German, is they have super big difficulties in entering another market in Europe. And if they try...
It's a basic, but we are still at this stage, so it's terrific sometimes.
I think we are still at the stage. It's like the biggest thing. I talked to Alban from Usign at the dinner, at the lunch 2 weeks ago in Berlin, and they are focusing on Germany right now. And they said, like, for us, it's super difficult. We don't know. There are just a couple of few examples where this worked out. And on the other side, I think it's not a rocket science. Yeah, I think we have capital in every market and existing venture capital players, which should be known. I think there are some service providers in performance marketing and sales and financial help, which should be known as well, yeah, at least from founders who operate there. So if I think about how to solve this problem, I think we just need kind of a SaaS concierge in every country. Yeah, if you're in a hotel in Paris and you have been never here before, I just go downstairs in a good hotel and say, okay, I need a place to eat, and then afterwards I'd like to go to a concert, and then I maybe want to meet. And I think it should be not too complex to set this up in all the big markets. Yeah, and I'm not sure if this should be done from the governmental side, or if it should be a union of, I don't know, founders to make it just faster, or maybe it's a business model in itself. Let's see. But I think this would help to accelerate crazily if we would have this.
We need to accelerate. No, we know that because the lack of platform is a real difficulty at the moment. We have to build at the continent, at the level of EU continent. I just think to the metaverse. When it will come? It come in China, but it's more difficult in the US and perhaps in Europe. But only if I take this example to develop this kind of new way to enter the internet without a platform, we can't do that. It's impossible to deploy these kind of services, or very limitation. And Europe will be very in good position to create content for the metaverse and so on, but where we can develop the services and to reach in a social networks way the people in the different European countries. So the lack of, and it's the same thing for e-commerce and so on. So we have a lack of platform, and we are dependent from the US one, and perhaps in the future from the Chinese one. We'll see. It's more difficult, but there is progress every year on these parts of the story. So so I would like to have your feeling, perhaps if you are pessimistic or optimistic at the end of this panel, to the capability to build a more independent digital Europe ecosystem. It is possible, or it will be forever. We will remain at the frontiers of our country with some success, but not at the level we need. Perhaps you want to come?
Okay, optimistic, otherwise I wouldn't be here. So of course it's not a done deal, of course it's not easy, but we need to remain optimistic. We need to be bold. We need to have some motivations to build really European giants. And we need to play with the same weapons than the US. So we need to get educated, and we need to share the world and make it happen. But I think that's possible.
Perhaps your optimism is coming from your industry, from the green tech, because you are on a positive wave as you said, also to develop your business inside the European frontiers. Have you the same feeling or vision, Julius?
Optimistic, but also a bit realistic. I think Carsten mentioned we are able to manage and to build big giants, like was it Zalando at the early days, and we did this. And I think the good thing is we have a super hungry and talented bunch of people here, who are hungry. I think there is a period of time where we still need to find the way, and it is probably accessing US capital. It's probably going to the US very early, but I think it will take time, and we all need to work on the ecosystem. But I don't see a big disruption in the next 2 to 5 years, as long as we do not really accelerate our efforts here.
Exactly. We don't see many change in the 2 years. But that's why it's important to have this kind of discussion, because we have first to share the diagnostic also to identify the pain point. And Carsten, from your side, I'm sure you are optimistic, but perhaps you can refine your point of view.
Actually, I am very optimistic. I've been doing startups now for 12 years. So I came after a little bit of consulting to Berlin in 2011, like early days of Zalando. And it was a complete different ecosystem back then, right? So it was different deals, different funding opportunities, and so on. Like the knowledge in the market, in the ecosystem, was just a complete different one. And I've witnessed now like a generation or multiple generations of founders, right? And with every generation, with every exit, like maybe not IPOs, but like mid-sized exits, right? So we have fresh capital that's going to be reinvested by previous founders, then become angels and so on. So I've witnessed all that, and like 12 years ago, it was only Berlin, right? So like back then, for me, the entry into becoming a founder came from consulting, was hired by Rocket Internet. That was like the typical path, right? And now there's so much more. So in Germany, there's Munich and Hamburg and so on. There's so many centers right now. Paris has developed incredibly. I'm not that familiar here, but like what I witness here is incredible. So overall, I'm actually very optimistic, right? I just think that the 2030 is a little bit too ambitious. I think it will take a couple of more cycles, right? So we need the IPOs, and then we need the Decacorn IPOs, and then we need the 100 billion market cap IPOs. But I see a few companies out there that can reach that and will reach that most likely. So I'm optimistic, and I wouldn't leave Europe, right? So for like I wouldn't move to the US just to start my next company. I think still it's the place here, but next time I would do it a little bit different.
I have more or less 5 minutes remaining. I would like to come back to your own activities, because we jumped directly to the theme of the panel. So it was obviously it was the job. So it's perhaps if you can share with us what is your next move in your activity. Caroline, you say but it was last year or this year you leverage 100 million. And a bit more, and to do what?
So yes, we raised 150 million last year, which was the biggest fundraising in that specific space. And so that was for international expansion. So we accelerated on specific European markets. So we opened
already established.
We have offices in London, London, Berlin, Milan, and Madrid. And the most recent offices are London and Berlin, and we're seeing great success in those geographies. And we are also having an open eye on the US, which means what we are doing, since we were not created at the beginning of the creation of Deepki, we were not created at the same time in Europe and in the US. Now we have to do it the difficult way, but it doesn't mean that we can't succeed. We do customer-led expansion. That means that we are trying to close US customers from London or Paris or Berlin. And once we have like a handful of customers customers, and we tested the product, the go-to-market, how we solve customer pains and that kind of things, and how we can fine-tune our product market fit. Then we open an office, and we've done that in European geographies. It was successful, and so that's what we're replicating in the US market.
Partner or by yourself?
So actually both. We are starting with partnerships. So we've signed earlier this year a global partnership with CBRE, which is the biggest player in the real estate industry. And we are now signing US customers from Europe. And so probably opening a real big office next year. But we have a few US employees behind the scenes already.
So we will follow this with very interest. Julius, what is your next step?
So the reason I think I'm here in France is to understand this ecosystem a bit better and to think together how we can connect these two worlds and make more together. So the next step is a very easy one. We are doing the Arrtist Summit on the 12th of October, where there will be a lot of knowledge, founders and C-level only, and investors sharing their knowledge about the German and European market. So if this is of interest, I invite everyone to connect there, because it's not only a summit. I think it's just a resource which helps everyone the next 12 to 24 months to enter the market. And super operationally, I'm here the next 6 hours. So if someone needs help or just an opinion about Germany, happy to talk in the next hours.
An important point, because we have no time for Q&A, so it's for everybody. So if you want to interact with the panelists, so we will take times after the panel itself. Carsten, for you, what is the next move?
So there, like as a founder, there's always like cycles, right? So sometimes you're fundraising, then you're building, then you're restructuring, whatever. Right now we're like in the cycle of just putting our heads down, like focus on execution. So just yesterday on the flight here, I had to say no to multiple inbound investors that still keep contacting us. To say right now it's like a terrible time for fundraising, right? So public markets, okay, they have recovered a little bit, but now they are more like flat, right? So still the private markets, venture capital is still not yet bullish enough to write like big checks. So for us, this means like we are focusing on execution, like we are getting our KPIs in shape. And I think in 2024, in our category, like there will be a lot of opportunity. Maybe there will be new fundraising rounds. For sure, there will be consolidation popping up, right? So companies running out of money. So a lot of opportunities for us, and I'm just focusing on building the vision.
It's an opportunity for me to ask you also another question. We read a lot just this week about a crisis in Germany, which is not so common in the past time. So there is an impact on the digital development of the digital companies, on the fundraising, on there is something which could be to be followed.
I would say absolutely, right? So it's interesting now, like it started last year, right? So the first layoffs in the US, the big tech layoffs, right? And then we saw this coming to Europe a couple of months later. Now we're seeing insolvencies. So it's very interesting. So like companies that started to lay off 6 months ago, 8 months ago, now become insolvent. So very like little funded companies, unfortunately, are going bankrupt, right? Because there is no fresh capital. So, and this is all also coming from the macro environment. Of course, like we always love to say, yeah, like who cares if automotive companies sell a bit less cars because they're under pressure from China or something. But at the end of the day, like it's an economy. We are part of an ecosystem, of an economic ecosystem. And yes, we are impacted, right? So, but overall, I'm bullish, right? There will be an upcycle for sure. And then all of us, like every single startup will, when the tide rises, right, all of the boats are risen as well.
Okay, so it's very important, because I think so, even if I point Germany, we are most of the other country or European country in the same boat, and digital certainly is a part of our future, and we will need to come back to this same during our following panels, but on the ground also. And thanks to have shared with us your experience, your skills, and I hope so you will learn 2 or 3 things. It will be some things, and we are at the end of.
Thank you so much, Jean.
Three. So
thank you so much. A big round of applause.